Hello, world. We're back on the Musicto label Facebook page. I'm Andrew, and I'm here with Tommy Tika from Bullet Lane. Tommy, how you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Looking forward to this chat.
Yeah, me too. Tommy is not also from Bullet Lane. He might be from a few other bands as well, but he also
right.
the Music to Celebrate Life playlist. Which is, not only does it have just amazing music on it, but if you get a chance, you should go and read the write-ups because they are brilliant to read, often very funny, but always
like
very,
very... This one.
Yeah, I did like the joke at the end of this week's track. It was brilliant. So we're going to keep this kind of nice and tight again, and we're going to build it around three core things. But if you want to hear, some more information about where the track came from, you can find that on the Celebrate Life Facebook page, which we'll put the link below. But for now, let's talk about what it's like to be an independent music artist in 2018. Because Tommy will have a good insight on this, because he's been doing this a long time. So what do you think, Tommy? Independent artist 2018, is this better than it was in the past or worse? What do you think?
Well, it's worse and better because on the one hand, you have all these channels like where you can put your music. You can get it on Spotify without signing. I mean, you don't have to sign with a label to do it. So there's a lot of ways to go about it to get yourself heard. But the problem is that the internet's become so wide and it's so filled with music that if you just shoot out single after single, they will appear in Spotify. But nobody's going to find them. And so I think that, in terms of what is it like to be an independent artist in 2018? I mean, in a way it's brilliant, in a way it's hell, because you have to work extra hard to find even one person that's going to listen to your track and say, it's great stuff, I'll post about it. And so, and I mean, you and I know this better than anyone. We're drowning with submissions. And the fact that you actually, we listen to, I think that we have a culture of listening to pretty much everything we receive. And we go, well, at most of it anyway. And I mean, I'm behind schedule, but I do listen to everything. And so, but you can't post, you can't add every track. It's just, sometimes you hear a track and it's great, but it just doesn't suit the mood of your list and stuff. And so if you turn this around and you look at the kind of people that independent artists need to approach to get heard, are people like us, Spotify curators, independent Spotify curators, also to blogging communities. And the problem is that they're basically, once a guy from, I don't remember which blog it was, said that, I like your track. The post will come out in 5 months. I'm like, bloody hell. Yeah, because he was drowning. It was just, and so to answer you, to sort of get a handle on this, I think that it's rewarding. And the good side of independent artists, always being an independent artist, is always that you get to do whatever you want to do. You don't have a label telling you what kind of songs you have to write. With Carmen Gray, when my brother and I were writing songs for Carmen Gray, we always had Warner or Sony telling us that, this is not a single. Now, why don't you boys run along, go back home and bring us one that we can actually put out, that the radios will play. And so that's the downside of having a huge corporation. But it's the problem with the other side of the coin is that, number one, when you make all the decisions about the singles, what goes on an album and what doesn't, then you're also responsible for mistakes. It's like, for example, choosing the wrong track that doesn't please the radios and stuff. So it's all, it's rewarding. Like I said, it's brilliant and it's hell. Very difficult to get heard. Very difficult to make a name for yourself.
But the game used to be, get your garage band, write your songs, go and play locally, see if you can get 100 people at your gig, see if you get 200 or 300 people. You're pitching to, maybe the label picks you up, and then you get to a major label, and then you become super famous. But that's not. I mean, the artists still want the same thing, don't they? They still want to be playing in front of 100,000 people on the stadium, but
the road to the audience. Yeah.
Right. But the road to get there is just different, isn't it?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, but if you think about in terms of playing in front of 100,000 people, you and I, because we're people of mature age, we're picturing a rock band, right? I mean,
Right.
right. We're basically now at Wembley Stadium, and there's a rock band and a crowd of, I don't know, 100,000. But I mean, these people, a lot of the people that are actually rather famous these days, they're DJs and stuff. I mean, it's a completely different ball.
And the Aviciis, and I mean, they're playing in front of 15,000 people, 20,000 people, and I don't know. But I think it goes back to a point you're saying earlier. It's about how do you get heard, isn't it? How do you get heard?
The challenge, yeah. Yep, that's the challenge.
And so, which kind of, and it's, even though there are more channels, it's just insanely hard to get on those channels, which is where, let's bring it into the Musicto thing. I mean, what do you think of playlists? Good thing or bad thing?
I love them. I think they're a great thing. I think that they're taking over a lot of good things that radios were doing back in the day. I think that, actually, didn't I write that piece that playlist curators are the new DJs, radio DJs, or equal radio DJs of the 50s? Because if there's a prominent playlist, and I'm not just talking about rap caviar or whatever, what have you. I mean, these are the big Spotify curated playlists, right? But I mean, if there's a playlist that has about 10,000 followers, and you have these independent ones, some of them do more than that actually, you get heard. I think they're a great thing. And also, one of the things that my manager just told me in terms of independent artists, because I called him and I said that, look, sometimes I wonder, because we're approaching these blogs that they're small, and how's that going to work? And he basically were on Skype, and so he looked at me and said that, Tom, they're small today, they're huge tomorrow. And so I think that, in the sense, you always, when nowadays everything's changing so rapidly. So when you're an independent artist approaching communities, and you should probably approach everyone, because it doesn't matter if a blog, for example, starts tomorrow and they have 2 followers and they post about you, you might think that, okay, I'm not going to approach them. But if you establish a relationship with them, and this is basically, this is free advice to anybody out there listening. If you establish a relationship with them when they have 2 followers, you're going to have a great relationship with them in 5 years when they have 20,000 followers, and they're still going to write about you. And so I think that, in terms of being an independent artist, here's the thing: you have to have business acumen. You have to, if you market your own stuff, you have to have good stuff. You have to basically be able to write songs, play, and all that, everything that the bands did before. But you also have to become your own manager. You have to become your own businessman. And I think that's the biggest challenge. I mean, number one challenge is getting heard, but the second hardest thing, really, and maybe even the hardest thing, is that if you have a group of 19-year-old musicians, they're not necessarily businessmen. And for sure, they're not people in their 40s who've been in the music business for 30 years, 25 years. And they have a network of, magazines and stuff. And so I think that it's this marketing issue that's really, really difficult. And just what I basically said just a minute ago is, I think that that's a good strategy. That's how independent artists should go about it.
But to me, it's interesting. It's, the idea of the romantic idea of the past is that you had the artists and they were just, these, mercurial beings, and they could be dicks, like the Sex Pistols, or people who had no personal skills, but they, captured the zeitgeist, or they had the music. But then you look at all the successful musicians, and they're fairly charismatic and fairly polite and fairly good at working with human beings, aren't they?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's basically, aren't we talking about reality versus sort of image, right? Because if in terms of a lot of the artists, if you look at their image, even the big ones, the ones that are huge, you might think that, that's he's so artistic, he wouldn't be, you know, he has a huge force behind him. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of them, even if they do have a huge record label or a group of managers and what have you handling their things, by the time you've been in the business, if you're a smart guy, and a lot of them are super smart, by the time you've been in the business for about 30 years, 40 years, you've learned a thing or two. And so, hence, going back to what you were saying, I mean, if you're a level-headed person, you can learn all of it. It's not rocket science, but you do need to keep an open mind, and you do need to have the will to grow and learn.
Because, I mean, so if the challenge in the independent music business is about being heard, yeah, it's about, I've got my track and I want to get it in front of people because that's the only way they're going to, know that it exists and hear it. And if the major doorway to that, because if radios are still, fairly, well kept in terms of gatekeepers, and if, the big Spotify list, then it is the independent playlist curators and music blogs. That is the only way you're going to get up in the ladder. So what do you think about the people that do the spray and pray? I mean, Musicto is now, we're blowing past 2,000 track submissions a month, and a lot of them are just people arriving on the site, going from playlist to playlist, cut and paste. And, I mean,
it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I think that one of the, when I started getting results after I became, once again, an independent musician about 6 years ago, I think that you need to spend a lot of time on, you want to make sure that the blog you're approaching, that there's actually a match between what they're posting and your own stuff. If they are about EDM, what's the point of sending them a garage rock song? I mean, if everything that they're raving about is another genre that you are representing, why waste their time and ultimately your own by submitting? Spray and pray doesn't work. I mean, it might work, but the problem is that if you don't find out what the blogs are about, and maybe you have energy and time to send out 100 emails, I mean, wouldn't you be doing yourself a favor as well if you went, just did some research for about a week and came up with 100 blogs that actually post about the type of music that you're playing, rather than just shoot it out? Because then maybe if it's like with everything in life, if you just sort of spray stuff all over the place, maybe 20% is gonna go where you want it to go, and then the remaining 80% is just gonna disappear in cosmos. It's like it doesn't exist. And so I think that while people might feel that, oh, who the hell are these curators, and why do we have to treat them like this, and prima donnas and what have you, and why can't they just listen to everything? But that's not the case at all. It's just that if the track doesn't fit the genre or the mood of the list, it doesn't mean that the curator in question doesn't like the track. It's just that they can't use it.
I think it's the power shift, and it's not. I mean, we have idolized artists, and technology. I mean, you remember having the 4-track that you'd be in your bedroom with, and you record one track, and then it was like, I can make a song. Yeah. And of course, now you can be a 12-year-old with a laptop, and you can create a symphony. So the production of music, the ability to produce and distribute music is now massive.
Oh, sure.
So what and again, this is all the whole Musicto thing. I think the power of the curator. I mean, what you just said earlier is, who are these people? Who are these independent? Who the hell do they think they are?
Right.
I think the power, the pendulum is just shifting this way.
Well, hence the response. But go on. Yeah, I mean,
I think if you don't realize that you as the artist don't have the power. I mean, you get the right match. So that this initial phase where there is way more music than there's ever been.
Oh yeah.
Then I think the independent playlist curator actually is more important than the independent artist at this stage of the artist's career. I mean,
No question. No question. No question. I mean, and you got to understand, even if we forget that we're living in these times and ages, even if you go back to the 50s, everybody needed help. I mean, think about it. What would have Elvis been without Tom Parker? I mean, if you can't find that one person who believes in your talent, or the Beatles without Brian Epstein, I mean, you have these boys playing, they're great, they're talented, they're doing real well in their own little sandbox, right? But you need that grown-up person that comes in and says that, look, boys, now, I got an idea for you. Now, how's about you do what I say, and I give you money? And so that's basically, you always need that one person. It used to be manager, then it became radio DJs, then, what have you. The power, it's been different. I mean, different people have held the power in the past, but I think that slowly but surely we're actually getting to the age of playlist curators, where they are your number one, they're the entry level, but they're also very influential.
It was interesting today. I went down one of the rabbit holes, as the internet does, and the other thing is time. Yeah, and then the point I want to make about time is that it takes time to get good at what you do. Yeah. So and I don't know how I ended up here, but I think I might have come across an acoustic cover of a Blink 182 song. What's My Age Again, or can't even remember, the huge power pop. And I think that album came out, Enema of the State, came out in 97 or 98. And you look at that, and they were at their peak, in 2000, just huge. But then you go back, and I just for shits and giggles listened to their first album that they released in 94, First Signed On, and it was appallingly bad. You could feel that there was something there, but it was pretty lame. But every year they released an album, and everything they were touring, they got better and better and better and better. And then suddenly you have this magic power pop song, power punk song, or pop punk song that is just, you don't write that shit overnight. It takes a decade of
it takes a decade.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be that different for the playlist curators. I mean, the independent playlist curator, it takes time to commit to do this, to learn how to do this. I think we forget about that. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, isn't that the case with everything? I mean, if I go back now, let me answer that question like this. If I go back now and I listen to the songs that I wrote when I was 16, which is basically 30 years ago, there's some of that is good, but it's not brilliant, because you have to have a starting point. You write stuff, and then the more you do it, just like with, if you're very active in developing your playlist and marketing it and what have you, you grow. Same thing for creators. I mean, also, I think that it's not just your playlist that grows, but you develop a sense of what it's about. And when I take a look at Music to Celebrate Life, which is my list, and so when it started, I sort of had an idea of what it could be about, and still the core is the same. It's the lyrics and the stories and what have you. But right now, I've realized during the past 2 months or 3 months that it can be more. It can have a lot more variety than I initially thought, and hence, as we've had these conversations, like, what else can you do if you can't include the artist in a manner where you do a write-up on their music, then what else can you do for them? And there's a plethora of things that you can do. You get more creative. Obviously, the more you do it, the more you get into it. And I think that when you have a few posts that artists are psyched about, and then ultimately you become sort of super stoked about them, and you want to write more, and you want to find out more, want to discover artists and stuff. Grows, just like everything else. It's a great thing to be in, by the way. I love it.
Sorry.
I love it,
I mean, which brings us into the I mean, Musicto. I mean, we're a baby organization. We've really only been around about a year. And we've gone through a lot of changes in the last 2 or 3 months where we have looked at our internal culture, looked at some of the processes, and we've been working, actually working as a community to, change and make it easier and make it more fun. But I mean, what's been your experience of being part of Musicto as a playlist curator, and then we'll talk briefly about as an artist?
Well, I mean, I loved every moment of it. I mean, it's like I said. I mean, we did a sort of an interview where I already said that I stumbled on the pages, and then that's the old story. We don't want to tell it again, but that's what happened. And as I started writing these blogs and whatever, and maybe it was the when we got to sort of, I got to know you, and then I got to know the community a little bit better. I think just the everybody's interested in this. It's everybody wants to develop their playlist. They're passionate about music, and we certainly have like every community. I think that you have people that are more active than others, but everybody's passionate about their lists. People. You listen to, I mean, I do listen to a lot of the other lists as well. I mean, every week. And I'm sort of, I'm looking forward to sort of that I see my own write-up up there on the internet, but I'm looking forward to what other lists are posting, because I love discovering music. And for example, Chris's play, the Music to Burn a Million Miles, I check that out every week because the stuff on that is just, it's wonderful. And so it's songs that I wouldn't have discovered myself. So I love doing this, but I also love discovering music from other playlists, and I love the interaction, the sense of community. I think that we have you at the helm, and I think that's basically where I love the way you've set it up, where is that we approach everything from the perspective of let's keep it positive, let's keep it creative, let's enjoy it. And so I think that's sort of rubbed off on all of us, and I think we're a happy community. I'm certainly real grateful to be part of it, and really looking forward to continuing. And
I'm stoked about the next phase. I really am. It's you can't build. I keep on saying to people, there's no manual that you can go to the library and go, how do we build this community? It doesn't exist, and we get it wrong. But when we get it right, it takes off like a rocket ship. And I know we are about to hit another growth curve, and it's going to change again, and it's going to be a super interesting ride. But to finish off, you are obviously, part of Musicto, and we have a relationship, through that. But you are helping us develop, the how we release tracks into the, into the world. And as part of that, I mean, you have many different options that you can sign a track to. What's it been like? What's the process like with us?
Well, I think it's. I think it's been exciting, actually. I like the fact that, okay, so this is basically, take a lot more than 5 minutes, but I'll keep it brief. I love the fact that there's like a 5-week plan to begin with. That's the initial phase. And then you continue. So basically, it's if you look at the marketing phase, and we're still developing it, by the way, but it can be anything from 2 to 3 months. And so it's basically, what happens if you're with a small label is that they have a release every 2 weeks. And so they market your stuff actively for 2 weeks. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, there's another guy, and they market their stuff, and they're not going to put as much effort on you as well. I mean, anymore after that. And so basically, I think that the strength here is that you have a longer period during which you do different things. You start from small, with Facebook, and then you build it up. And at the end of 2 weeks, when normally it would all be the biggest rush would be over, we were chatting, and you said that, well, we haven't really even gotten started properly yet. I love it, because that's basically what you need to do. You need to keep going, and it'll take a while for a song to catch on. And if you only put in those 2 weeks or 3 weeks, nothing, I mean, okay, fine. You might get super lucky, but just based on my experience, nothing's going to happen. And so that's a very big strength with music too.
It's, you know, we're still developing it, but I'm liking the data. I'm liking, you know, using custom audiences, you know, finding, you know, if there's a gender, you know, demographic, if there's, you know, what's the age demographic, and then, you know, remarketing to them so they get to hear the track and they get to hear the full track. I mean, right now, I Don't Love You, the current track that we're working on with Tommy, I mean, it's had over, I don't know, I mean, we're getting over 10, 15,000 10-second video views. Now, that's not massive for, you know, radio play, but it certainly helps us, you know, define who's listening to it, why they're listening to it, so that when we do start the second part of outreach, which is, you know, going to bigger lists and going to radio, we can let them know, hey, you know, 35 to 50-year-old women, you know, in these countries love this track. Here's the data.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, and also I think so far, I mean, since if we're going to be doing more lists, playlists, release tracks at some point, I think that, you know, it's actually valuable that we're working with one track at a time, because anybody who's ever been signed to even, well, a small label, let alone a large one, knows that how they operate is that they approach radio stations with a stack of singles, and yours is just one of them. And so I think that how does it feel like as an artist? I think it feels great, because you're getting a lot of one-on-one attention, as opposed to just being one in a huge crowd of artists that are all thrown in the same basket, you know? Right. And so I think that what we're developing here might be in the development stage, which is great, but I think we're onto something real cool here. I think this could be the second sort of phase, not just in terms of blogging and curating, but also how tracks are introduced through playlists. And ultimately, since we're releasing them through playlists, then our goal is the same for the tracks as it is for playlists, to find more people to listen to them and to grow our audience in tandem.
Absolutely. I mean, the vision for, I mean, it's taking a little longer, but, you know, everything always takes longer. I mean, the vision for this is celebrate life, to have, you know, a couple of 100,000 subscribers, you know, 300,000 or 400,000 subscribers. That you sign people to your playlist. I mean, why not? Because you've got the audience, you grew it, and people trust you. And, you know, your playlist exists in social space, it exists on the streaming platforms. You built it through your own blood, sweat, and tears, and you're signing tracks in, but you're doing that in tandem with the independent artist. I think, to me, it just looks like the future, and it looks like the future that you can organically grow to get there, and that's the difference.
Well, it is the future, because it's combining the best of all worlds, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's making it simple.
Yeah. Well, but it requires, you know, the crazy ass artist who, you know, wants the wife and kids is up in the studio writing or doing whatever. But it also, you know, requires the crazy ass curator who, while the wife and kids have gone to bed, is up listening to music and doing whatever. And I think that is, as you know, as reflected in the amount of tracks that we get submitted, it's clear that there's an awful lot of music out there, but there aren't an awful lot of curators out there. And the curators are going to become more and more important. And if we get this right, then, you know, that marriage between curator and artists developing relationship with curators over time, that's going to be huge for both parties.
Oh, it's just going to keep growing. No doubt about that. I think that's where we're heading now.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, Tommy, as ever, thank you very much. Go and check out I Don't Love You. We'll also have a link to that down there. It's it's beautifully written. I mean, for the lyrical story, if you're if you've ever been in a marriage, you'll resonate with it. You say that. Alrighty, Tommy, I will catch you on the flip. Everybody, peace out, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers. Bye.